We love you!
Hello and welcome to Tribe Talk, the Galway Hurling podcast, with me, Patrick Earley and David Connors, where each week we'll discuss and divulge all the goings-on in Galway hurling. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the club scene and of course focusing on inter-county, in this, Shane O'Neill's first year at the helm, all of which we'll do in the company of some special guests and former Galway greats. So do come along and join us on Tribe Talk, Galway's dedicated hurling podcast.
It's a bumper weekend in the Galway Senior Hurling Championship, and we're back. It's a bumper week here on Tribe Talk as well. Back for our second episode of the week, as myself and David look ahead to the weekend's preliminary quarter-final action. I suppose I don't know. Are we fully over everything that went on last week, David? There was a lot not to take in, but it's it has to be parked again straight away as we start looking forward again to knockout hurling from here on.
That's exactly it, Patrick, isn't it? You just no time to rest on your laurels at all. You're straight back into it, Good thing we're getting paid well this week anyway. The overtime is well worth the extra episodes. So, yeah. As
ever. We won't even disclose the rate we're getting for it, but
you'll be jealous anyway. That's all we'll say.
Well, look, it's great to be talking about it anyhow, and for teams. I suppose teams they're all in the same boat this week. Everyone that's out, it's kind of you've got your week or 6 days probably in some teams' cases to I suppose kind of come to terms with everything that went on last week, and recover physically, mentally. There won't be too many balls hit this week in reality, So, but in that regard, everyone is in the same boat, So there'll be no complaints either way from any team. I'm sure there will be teams will be down a couple of bodies here and there. It's kind of part and parcel of it all. But look at where we've got a few cracking games to look ahead to. So we might tear straight into it, and we'll start. We'll go through them as they play out over the weekend. Just a quick rundown through the fixtures first. So we've Clarinbridge and Mullagh kicking off the action Saturday at 1 o'clock in Kenny Park. 2 double headers in Kenny Park, of course. That's how they're running it, which is brilliant. Although they're double headers, not like they were before, of course. But a couple hours later, at 4 o'clock, we have Sarsfields against Ardrahan, also Saturday, and then Sunday we have the double header, probably the game of the weekend in most people's eyes. Mellows and Gort kicking things off at 3 o'clock. Those times have been changed, of course. Both games pushed back. So 3 o'clock is the throw-in time for Mellows and Gort, followed by Craughwell and Ahascragh-Fohenagh at 6 o'clock. So we'll start with the battle of the green and white hoops. Clarinbridge against Mullagh. Of course, they'll both have to. Well, at least one of them will have to change this weekend. 2 senior B teams going ahead, David. Both through last weekend with a round to spare, and then both subsequently defeated last week. So similar preparations in many ways. Probably differing campaigns. Too has to be said. Obviously playing different levels of competition. Mullagh would have played a kind of a disappointing Killimordaly out with the first day out, and then had to kind of ride their luck to get over Pierce the second day out, where day one, and then very kind of comprehensively beat us for a finish in round 2. So look at they're both here now, both coming in off defeats. What are your thoughts on it?
Probably all in all, you'd probably say Killimordaly would be favourites. You'd kind of have to have them as favourites. They probably looked a bit more impressive overall, and they've kind of when they've beaten teams, they've beaten them well. And I suppose the last day out, really, it's not a really true reflection of where they're at. You'd imagine now, you'd hope that wouldn't be a true reflection of where they're at. That they're probably a bit further down the line than getting bit by maybe Athenry. But it's still a very interesting contest. Mullagh bagged loads of experience there. They've been there in Senior A before. They know they'll have a battle. We'll give them that much. They absolutely love a battle. They thrive under that. So I think they'll probably try and turn it into that, if nothing else. And they have a bit of quality as well, like between the Glennons and Dervin and Sean Hardiman and a few more like that. So on that though, still I'd probably just make the prediction right nearly here. I still think Killimordaly will probably do it. I think Athenry might suit them as well. Bit more, they're a bit, probably a bit more pace and a bit more leggy about them. And another thing, I suppose the only thing with the last day would have been Mullagh losing the 3 lads in defence, which would be if two two or even one of those lads are missing the next day between Johnny Raftery, Eddie Campion and Kevin Briscoe, it would prove to be a huge blow, because I think we mentioned it last night that they're just squad depth this and there in a lot of these squads. How do you see it playing out yourself, or how do you think it's going to work out?
Yeah, I was kind of the Kenny Park aspect was something I took a bit of a look at, because off the top of my head you think of Killimordaly, you think Kenny Park is where you see them an awful lot of the time, whereas Mullagh, it's Ballinasloe primarily is where you look at them, So I did a small bit of digging. I went back 7 seasons, including this year, looking at Mullagh's fixtures in the championship. No particular reason for 7, but that's about as far back as Wikipedia goes. This will be, I don't have all the programs to hand, but this will be Mullagh's 6th championship appearance in Kenny Park in 7 years, which is nothing really when you look at it that way. You look at the likes of Clarinbridge who I don't know, they play Kenny Park a couple of times a year at least anyhow. So could be a factor. We don't know. The weekend is promised good, which certainly it certainly plays to Killimordaly's strength. They're all about hurling, really quality strikers of the ball, as we know, plenty of skill levels there. So of course one of those games in Kenny Park that Mullagh played in recent years was against Killimordaly last year in round 3 of the group, which Killimordaly won by 4 points, 217 to 116. So not a lot between the teams based on that. Of course, Killimordaly were going well at that time as well. They went on to finish 2nd in the group, and Mullagh 3rd. So both sides went through. So not a lot between them based on that. Both coming into this game with fairly decent form. So I think if it depends on if Mullagh can implement the kind of game that they want. If it turns out into a game all about space and how much would Killimordaly have, they're going to hurt you. They're going to hurt anyone with the attack they have. Whereas if Mullagh can kind of drag it down a small bit, and that's no disrespect either, saying that they're not as good at hurlers or anything, but it's just the kind of the style they play, and that suits them as well. Being used to Duggan Park and Lochray as well. Those are the kind of games that you often get embroiled in. So I think that plays a big factor in it. A lot of this depends on how Mullagh can they implement their will on the game, and if they can, I can't see a whole pile being in it. Whereas if Killimordaly are kind of get up ahead of steam and are finding forwards in space, I think they'll just hurt Mullagh too much, and get the win that way. Matchups, there's no more than all the games this weekend. There's a lot of interesting ones to look at. David Glennon is kind of the first one I suppose we'd take a look at. Ahascragh-Fohenagh, we saw they struggled with them for large periods until Stephen Kelly went out and managed to do a bit of a job on them in the second half. Killimordaly, I don't know, Jack Fitzpatrick, Declan Connolly, they're the two names that spring into my mind. Connolly's playing kind of cornerback this year so far, and Jack Fitz is established as their number 6 for a good few years. So that's the one question mark I'd have. I think Killimordaly are quite set in their 6 backs. Ian Cannon came in. Conor Daly started the first day wing back, and Ian Cannon came on for him midway through the second half or thereabouts against Ardrahan. And since then, he just took Conor Daly's spot, and they've played those 6 backs. Declan Connolly, Paul Cannon, and Lawless, Adam Brett, Jack Fitz, and Ian Cannon. That's been their starting 6, and they don't change. They play those positions. So that's an interesting kind of side note. Are they going to change their approach to keep an eye on Davy Glennon? I think compared to other teams who will be very comfortable at doing it, it's not, if you're not accustomed to doing it, if you have trust in your 6 backs the way they do, they might just kind of play it as they see it and see how it goes.
But you've always the opportunity to adjust anyway there. You can see how it starts off, and now if Glennon was in the form he was, for 40 minutes of that game the last day, Mullagh are in with a real shout here, because he was unplayable. And you always have a chance then. Like Dervin is a real classy forward inside as well. He's very underrated over the last few years, I think, in Galway circles. He'd be every year you look at Mullag's overall tally, should I say, and he's always towards the top of it, and he's deadly accurate from frees, from 45 yards out, from there. And if they go back a bit further, Ronan Glennon seems to be on them this year. it'll be like you said there. I think it'll be the key men, and whoever can get their key men, firing on all cylinders and get that extra bit of space in them. Just from a Mullagh standpoint of view, then you'd be looking at, is it going to be like Sean Hardiman is probably going to have to track one of Brian Kincannon or Brian Burke there, so that leaves maybe someone like Shawnee O'Brien, who was actually fierce impressive against Ahascragh the last day. Now I didn't touch on him. I didn't touch on him in our review show, but Jesus, I probably should have, because he was absolutely super. Particularly in the first half, he got on the world of ball, and when Mullagh took over for that spell where they scored 1-6 towards into the half, that half back line was utterly dominant all over. They were they mopped up ball between themselves, like, so, Briscoe, Hardiman and Shawnee O'Brien, they're a formidable half back line there alone. So it's they will pose questions of they will need, say, the likes of Brian Burke and Kincannon to be at their best, because them lads will give them socks of it anyway, for sure, throughout. But I think for that fixture last year, which probably be a big one, and looking back, I think it was just on the notes there was no Brian Burke that day when Killimordaly, so like that would have been a huge blow from a Killimordaly point, and just on that alone, maybe you could say the boys, I could see Killimordaly maybe winning this, 5 or 6 points, to be honest with you, if just the way it kind of works out now, unless I think they're just that bit further down the line at the moment than Mullagh, and I don't think the defeat last weekend will have knocked as much stuffing out of them, say, than it would have knocked as much stuffing out of Killimordaly than it would out of Mullagh. It was a bitter blow to swallow, really, because they still had their promotion bid in their own hands, and they kind of let it slip through. But fierce, interesting contest overall, though. Like, as you said, who do you, from a Mullagh standpoint, then who do you think will be tracking the likes of Kincannon and Brian Burke?
Yeah, like it's a lot depends on where Brian Burke is stationed as well, because you're probably going to have one of them in either line, and they have the freedom to to change it as the game progresses as well. Like Burke did his damage against Ardrahan in the half forward line. He did his damage against us in the full forward line. So like I couldn't see Mullagh taking Sean Hardiman out of the half back line to go to mark one of them. I don't think. I think you're losing too much by doing that. Like if he had to go out into the wing, I think I could see that all right, but I don't think that they'd take him out the half back line. Shawnee O'Brien has done jobs, man marking jobs for them before, and is well capable. So he's a fella that certainly could pick up somebody there. And then if the thing that Johnny Rafferty is fit and Brian Burke has gone in full forward, I think he could just start. They could just go man on man there, the two of them, and have a go. I tell you, high balls will be fairly interesting. I tell you, all that goes on before the ball actually arrives. There'll be plenty of dark arts there, I'd imagine, going on.
And no timber spared either between them.
No. They're both very cute, the two of them. Like, they know how to attack ball, and make the most of it in the air, So, like, the reality is, with Burke, if high ball's coming in and Mullagh get it to ground, that's what you're asking for of your fullback or your halfback, whoever's on him. Just get it to ground, and then after that, it's up to the players around to get in and swarm it and turn it into a dirty ball and turn it into a backs ball, and pick it up and get out of there. Kincannon still hasn't caught fire in this championship yet. We speculated. You thought it might happen from the last day. Didn't really get going. So they're still looking for that to come out in them. Like, has to remember they're missing Paul Craven as well, who scored 1-9 when these teams went last year. So he's a serious quality forward. And a lad who's hurling brilliantly this year is David Earls, a wing forward. There's 3 points he got the last day, and got did he get 1-1 or 1-2 against us anyhow? Hurling very well this year, and kind of had to bide his time for get his chance in the team for a couple of years. And last year kind of got they injected an awful lot of youth into the team last year. Himself and Luke Linsky and Darren Daly all kind of came in as starters into the team, and kind of have taken their chance and held on since. So he's a big man. He's a big presence under a high ball and good hurler out wing forward. So he's another fella we'll need to watch out for. But yeah, I'd be in agreement with you. I think Clarinbridge would just have that bit too much for them, and could win by 5 or 6 points. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first game of the weekend. We'll move on to the second game then, Kenny Park, Saturday evening, 4 o'clock throw in for Sarsfields and Ardrahan. Teams that when they meet in recent years you'd associated a lot more with Camogie, to be honest. Previous meetings between these two, there's nothing of significance, nothing that would have involved players going out on Saturday, so there's nothing to read into in that respect. Sarsfield's going to go into it as fairly hot favourites, even despite kind of poor enough show last week, you know. You'd be expecting a big step up from Sarsfields, which in turn it means Ardrahan need to step up big time, David.
Oh, absolutely. Jesus, being honest, it's hard to see Ardrahan getting anything from here. Just the kind of difference of where they're kind of coming from, really. You know, like I suppose like Sarsfields are just so many big games played already this year. You know what I mean? And you know they've kind of played, they've experienced it all. They've lost a close game. They've won a close game, and they've absolutely blitzed Portumla as well. So you know it's an interesting kind of one. Really, it'll be interesting to see whether, again, we've spoke so often about Scahill, Hines, you know, whether they'll be back and whether that could add to Joseph Cooney moving up, because that would put Ardrahan under serious pressure if he has the capability of shoving into the attack. I suppose it's at this point it's probably a satisfactory year from an Ardrahan standpoint as it is, you know, getting here,
for sure.
Nothing to worry about in terms of relegation. Now it's, you know, there's a few young lads there that are experiencing kind of knockouts, you know, for first time in a while, and you know they're probably relish the experience as well. Keenan Fahey was quite the last day now though, but he could cause problems, and his battle with, say, someone like Darren Morrissey who started fullback will be a cracker of a battle really in there. They'll both of them will really enjoy that one. Still, I think Sarsfields are a lot better than they showed against Castlegar. You feel like someone like Alex Kinnear could, you know, do fair amount of damage here if he gets he'll be afforded a lot more space than he was against Cashel anyway, and he looks a real live wire in there. And Kevin Cooney had an off day outside the 2 goals really, so you'd expect more from him again. So yeah, I think, being honest, it's you'd hope to see Ardrahan in it kind of towards the end, but I don't know. I think Sarsfields could win this one pulling up, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think Ardrahan will show more going up against Sarsfields now, back in their side. They love hurling, that's right, Ardrahan doing. I'd expect more from them. I think I reckon Keenan will probably have a better game than he did against us. He was marking good backs the last day, you know, not easy to get much off them lads. But a couple of good news bits for Ardrahan, of course, was the return of Jason Kennedy off the bench the last day against us. Has had a really tough time, but for a couple of years with ongoing injury issues, and he went off with I think it was a hamstring injury at one of the games last year that I was at, and like on his day, or fairness, when he's fully fit, he's a marquee forward for them. He's a huge man, plenty of skills, real target man, and a great striker. Like, you know, he's really, really dangerous. You could see he wasn't that long back against us when he came on the last day. So like, even the extra week now, probably that those 20 odd minutes he got against us, that'll bring him on a lot, you know. If they could get him back into some sort of match shape and match sharpness, even more so than shape, sharpness is worth an awful lot. He's a huge addition to them there, and of course Ian Callan's going to be back now for them, cornerback. He's that number 2 jersey nailed down for the last 5 or 6 years, or if not more. And he was suspended the last day, so he'd be one of their kind of go-to man markers. So you'll be seeing him doing a job on, I don't know, he might go over on Alex Kinnear maybe or something like that. I'd imagine if Kevin Cooney is going in full forward, Conor Cosgrove will pick him up there. Whoever goes in full forward, Cosy will pick him up. You know, he's a high quality fullback.
Yeah.
And then I suppose outside that, Pierce McCann is probably their detailed go-to man in terms of who's going to mind a kind of the opposition marquee forward. He did the job on Brian Kincannon. He marked Joy Gantley the last day for us, went out centre back. You know, so I'm not sure that he marked Keenbrook the day before against Athenry, but I'd imagine he did if I had to take a shot at it. So he again really clever in the air. Yeah, he got a couple of balls over Joey the last day, and he'd come in. He's an orthodox kind of right-handed hurler, but he'd come in from off Joey's left, and he'd hold the hurl in his left hand and hold Joey off that way, and go up and catch with his wrong hand, which is it's a great skill. It's something that you couldn't be going at unless you've worked a lot on it. But it's a great skill to have, and he used it to great effect. So look, Ardrahan have plenty to offer here. On the other side of things, it's the competition you're playing. Like, Ardrahan are going from playing ourselves and Killimordaly, but Athenry as well, where Sarsfields are playing Castlegar and Thomas is like, that's worth a lot when you get to this stage, having played that sort of quality. And will Ardrahan would step up, catch them in the first quarter, we'll say. Are they going to be out in the rear after 15 minutes, just purely with the pace Sarsfields bring to the game? It's something that you have to adapt, and you have to get your second win fairly fast, or else they could do a lot of damage early on. We spoke about the issues Sarsfields had in attack last week. But you name out their inside line, the last Alex Kinnear, Kevin Cooney, Mark O'Regan, there's serious talent in there. So was it the case of just an off day? This is kind of where you find out, really. Certainly in the half-hour line, they'll be looking for more. Eric Kenny, Niall Morrissey, and Brian McLaughlin. They will need more from that line. A point from play from Morrissey was kind of all they produced. So there are improvements to be made there. If Joseph Cooney goes up there, of course it's going to make a big difference. But equally, if he stays back centre back, he could have Big Ear Latanian for company. That will be some battle in its own right. So a lot to look forward to. But in saying that, look, I think Sarsfields have played better opposition. They've got probably a better squad, better lads to come in off the bench, and I've expected Ardrahan to perform well, but I think Sarsfields are going to be that bit too good for them.
Yeah, that'll be something I'd agree with. I think it's just coming from Senior B, that group is just. It's just so difficult to come in and hit the ground running straight away, and particularly a week later as well. You know what I mean? Like this week they won't have a whole pile of time to do a whole lot of work. As you see it on the field, it'll be more kind of recovery really more than anything else, in the small bit of technical work beforehand. Just kind of getting the matchups there. But Sarsfields can kind of hurt you. We've kind of mentioned it so much. Sarsfields can kind of hurt you from so many different areas now. They can, even Darren Morrissey's kind of marauded up the field a few times and clipped over a few points on play, when times are needed, and when he's capable of shoving on as well. It'd be interesting to see will the two of them will they imply kind of an orthodox 15, or how will it work out? Up until the last day, Joseph Cooney wasn't really sweeping, or they weren't really playing a sweep for Sarsfields. They kind of just went out and they kept it mostly kind of traditional, really, more than anything else. But I'd expect, we kind of touched on it already, you'd expect a bit more from Mark O'Regan. That inside line is so threatening, Kinnear and Kevin Cooney. And if they catch fire at all, it could be a serious headache for Ardrahan firstly. And, from there, then you have the battle with Tanyan and Joseph Cooney is a seriously interesting one. If Tanyan can stop him from delivering quality ball in and on, he'll be actually acting more as a defender if Cooney's at 11, just kind of trying to stop him from playing. You wouldn't leave his side and just kind of stop him bursting out with the ball and delivering that, that lovely ball that he loves to deliver into the corner, cross diagonal ball that, you'd have Kinnear picking up or Kevin Cooney running down the line to get it. I think because Sarsfields struggled so much with the Castlegar system, I think I would put it down to that last week rather than, that they were very, very poor either. It was kind of, they were, it's a difficult system to break down, as many teams have seen, as Fergal Lynch is, somebody described him to me last week as he's a disciple of Davy, as they say, you know what I mean? So any team that, lads are, it's not a defensive system, we'll say, it's lads are given license to get forward and, you can score from anywhere, and, it's, they're hard team to break down. So I'm going to go. I'm fully agreeing with you here, and I think it'll be a Sarsfields victory, and they'll be probably much improved. I hope on the last outing, we'll say.
Yeah. Okay. Fully in agreement so far. I don't know if that bode well for teams or not, but that's what we're going
your
so
kiss
far.
of death. Your kiss of death will be.
I'm either bringing you down this week now, or I'm right back on top. I don't know.
You're only as good as your last game. Isn't that what they say? So
that's it exactly. On to Sunday. The big one of the weekend. Mellows and Gort repeated the 2017 county final, the first time they've played since. Look, it's probably they were the top team in the two bowls that teams were being drawn out of in the draw last weekend on Galway Bay, so it is the draw neither of them wanted in a way, but I think they'll both relish it at the same time. I'd say they're both looking forward to having another crack off each other this weekend.
That's for sure. I suppose there's probably two teams that have gone in different trajectories since that meeting. Gort would have been disappointed with the last couple of years, and particularly last year getting relegated to Senior B. It would have been something they would have imagined or foreseen themselves producing. But as we said, Mellows are probably the most consistent team in the championship since their county final win. Well, obviously Thomas as well, but outside of that, they're just ultra consistent. Every day you go out, you know what you're going to get for them, and you're going to have to put in a really good performance to beat them. Even they probably had Thomas's on the racks in the first half of last year's county final, and arguably could have won. But that's probably a day for another day, or a story for another day. So, again, some really, really good matchups are out there. You'll be it's you're looking at you're looking at Stephen Barrett and Richie Cummins, or you're looking at Sean Morrissey and Mike Mullins, or Gavin Lally and Angus Callan will be a good battle as well. No more than probably Jack Grealish and Conor Kavanagh, and then you have Conor Elwood up against Aidan Hellebert, and there's just fine battles all over the field, really. I suppose it's a great Gort will be looking forward to this. They want to be playing teams now of Lee Mellow's calibre. They won't want it. They'll probably, by all accounts, they'll probably have liked the draw. They want to be playing these kind of teams, and they want to be testing themselves and showing that they probably are a Senior A team just in everything but status, really. And if they can catch fire like that 111 the last day, you'd never know, but they'll need to get out the blocks a bit quicker. They've been lethargic at start and over reliant on, say, Hellebert to keep them in the game. Because if they're slow out of the blocks, Mellows are a team that could punish them. And like the Kavanagh, he's probably hasn't hit the goal trail as much as he has in previous years, and he could be a day for him now to rack up a couple. He loves Kinney Park. He loves goals in Kinney Park in particular. You should have. I think we've all seen him. Get a number of goals there, but there's probably a whole lot of changes in the two teams either, Patrick, since they've had a meeting. There's probably bits and pieces, but nothing personnel wise. Rather positional wise, there's probably a bit, but personnel wise, not a whole lot.
Yeah, well, Mellows in particular, looking back at the county final 2017, of the 18 players they used that day, 13 of them are going to start this weekend. The only two exceptions are Liam O'Donovan and Conor Hines. Of course, there was a Conor Hines playing that day too, with a different Conor Hines. So they were just, I'd say, Conor Hines. The current Conor Hines was definitely too young, and I imagine Liam O'Donovan was probably too young at that stage as well. For Gort, they've lost 4 of that team that started. So Mark McMahon, Andy Cohen, Mike Cummins, and Caelan Higgins are they're unavailable between retirement or injury or being abroad. And then there's a few more of that involved that aren't guaranteed their places. So you have Silvio Glennan, Albert Mullins, Hart. We don't know if Hart going to be fit to play. Based on what we saw last week, I'd be doubtful whether or not he'll feature. It's the kind of thing from here on. They were probably fairly sure he was fine last weekend, and they found out very quickly, and he found out very quickly that he wasn't. And it's with a hamstring. I don't know. Is that rectifiable in a week?
It's a case of they definitely wouldn't be able to carry anyone, against Lee Mellows. If you're not at 100%, you'd rather, I say 100% say, like even Keith Killalay or Albert Mullins or Paul Killalay starting rather than a 40 or 50% Hart. Now Hart is a serious bit of stuff, but Jesus, he just he's a player that relies on his his pace and power, and if he's not had to explode the first 10 yards, it's taken a lot out of his game, isn't it, really? So
coming up against players of the caliber of Mellows lads as well, they'll just him being at 40, 50, 60%, you're going to lose out. It doesn't matter who he is, if he's an intercounty or not. If you're operating only at that level against players of this quality, you're just going to lose out, like simply put, So I really was savage impressed with Mellows the last. It was the first time I'd seen them this year, live. I'd seen them on the stream, but first time I'd seen them live. And like the thing is, you look at Gort's threats, and you compare that to what Mellows have at the back. The kind of the matchups you mentioned there. There's no changes or interchange involved in taking care of kind of if they go as we say they will. Stephen Bartleby cornerback on Richie Cummins, Sean Morrissey wing back on Mike Mullins, Conor Elwood centre back on Aidan Helbert. That's where they're playing already, so that just shows the strength and depth that they have, that they don't need to change anything to be able to have the right lads and the right men. Up front, like they have talent kind of in all sectors really, and they have different sorts of threats. You've on one wing you've Adrian Morrissey, and there you've Jack Hastings, totally different players, and Jack Ford in the middle. Then it's some combination of a half hour line that can offer you a bit of everything. There's a bit of a dog in Hastings, and there's plenty of class as well. Don't get me wrong, but that kind of the rough and tumble, he really excels in it. Jack Ford will cover ground all day and get his head up, and he plays a lot of clever balls and clever runs. And then Morrissey kind of does a bit of everything. He's a classy scorer. And then I was savage impressed with him in the air the last day. And physically, he's developed into a really a really fine athlete. It was really good the last day. And then inside you've kind of the threats of Kavanagh and Hines in the corner, and they feeding off Callan at full forward. It's kind of the tests don't come any easier for Gavin Lilly every week. He's learning this trade fairly quick. I tell you, that's for sure. He'll learn a lot this weekend, and if he can get through and do a job in Angus Callan, well, you're a proven club fullback in my eyes. Anyhow, So I think you'll see a lot of questions answered this weekend in that regard as well.
Yeah, it'll be a bruising contest around the middle third, you'd imagine, though. They're both able to put it around put it about, we'll say. So there'll be plenty of hard hits going on. I'm really looking forward to maybe the first 10 minutes, because one of these, this is do or die championship action again, and that's been great. Maybe the last round in particular, it was just some of the games were just hammer and tongs right from the off. There was kind of no feeling each other out. Both teams knew they had to go for it. But yeah, it's looking forward to it. Probably Hart might have been taking maybe Ty Karen if he was 100% fit, so that kind of nullified something there. But with him missing now, that's they're going to need someone else to really step up there and kind of put the shackles on Tiger, as they say, because he's just he's an awesome player, really. When he gets in his stride. And Kenny Park is a place where he seems to love playing in as well down there. So yeah, I suppose. Again, we're going back to probably Mellows with that bit more tested. The group of death they're after coming out of. I know they left us in the last day, but Jesus, after losing the first day against Turlock, it's been all on the line for them now ever since, and they've stood up and they've been counted, and they've shown no signs of they were ever going to exit the championship, really, to be honest with you. Maybe more and more, maybe not, because they were never going to be beaten by Clarinbridge anyway. So this is just. Gort haven't, maybe Craughwell aside, they haven't played a team of, this quality, so it's, and they probably just haven't had the games that Mellows have had tested. So for that reason alone, I'd expect Mellows to come out on top. Myself here on this one anyway. So I don't know about yourself. You're going to side with the neighbours there, yeah.
You worded that nicely, didn't you? One thing I found very interesting was we talked about kind of the lads that Gort are going to be bringing in, the Albert Mullins, the Paul Killies, the Keith Killies. When they come on the last day, they just, the Ballindarian lads, it was as if they shrunk a couple of inches or that, because they got totally bullied, I thought, from there on. They kind of a lot most of the second half. They're in around the middle third and their own Ballindarian's own half back line in particular, coming out with ball and that, they were just totally bullied. That's something you can do so easily against Mellows, as they proved last week against Ormore Mary. But it's certainly something Gort can try implement at some stage. Now, I don't see them making changes to the starting 15 and taking that approach from the off. but it's certainly something that they can introduce off the bench, which is it's kind of a nice little threat to have in your arsenal, because they have the team that they're picking now. There's a lovely kind of blend with the likes of Ronan Burke and Mike Mullins in attack, and then you've got Paddy Cummins and Richie Cummins there with them as well, like totally different sorts of players. And then Hellebert's kind of the glue that kind of knits it all together, and the scorer that's that's always on hand for the simple points that he always executes so well, So they have a lovely blend there that I think it's a better forward division, I think, than they've had in a couple of years. Sometimes I thought they were relying too much on kind of bulk and brawn over a number of years, and then relying on Richie Cummins to be the one to add the bit of pace and the bit of cut and thrust to it. But they've got more of that now, and like George Dunn as well, the same way inside. Like, he's a similar sort of a player. When he gets the ball, is looking to take on his man straight away. So I like the direction they're going. But as we say, this is kind of where you kind of have to find out where they're at. Because even had they played Craughwell in their third group game, I'd put more weight in how they got on in that as well. But whereas they both played each other on the first night, on a Thursday night, it was a good game. Don't get me wrong, but I think both teams have actually improved a lot since then. That was your first match back since COVID, since championship last year. Essentially, no one's going to be operating at full tilt that night. You take a lot of learnings from it and you implement them over the coming weeks, but Gort actually haven't had to implement. They haven't had to show that any improvement at all to win their two games since. Whereas now it kind of comes at you all at once here. Now you're playing the second best team, one of the best teams in the county for the last number of years. So everything has to come right for them this week, and it has to be their best performance really to kind of get a win over Mellows.
I will say in a game of attrition, like Gort have an advantage in that they have a lot of players of the similar kind of standard on the bench. That have 20 players of very similar standard. That if one fella isn't performing, like say Ronan Burke, he didn't hit the heights he had already in the championship this year, but they were able to bring on say someone like say Albert Mullins, who won't it won't be a drop off there in terms of performance. Or like we mentioned them before, like you've Sylvie Glennan back, or you have Keith Killalay or Paul Killalay, or there's that. Even Jason Grealish was back in the last day as well. There's plenty of players there that are serious quality. But I think one thing I really liked about Gort this year is the kind of blooded, like I know it's his second year now, but Jason O'Donoghue has been very impressive there. Seems like a good little man marker as well, and he's strong enough and he's quick despite being small. And Paddy Cummins has added an extra dimension to their attack as well, and he looks like he's a fantastic hurler in my eyes. Anyway, from just the couple of games I've seen him, he can literally do it all. Like he can pop it over the shoulder. He's able to deliver good balls in. He's able to play, say, half forward line, midfield, or full forward line, whichever you require from him. So it'd be interesting to see whether maybe someone like that, he might go in on Collins or something, or I don't know. It'll be interesting. Or will they put someone of, say, big strong stature, like say one of the Mullinses or something like that, in on top of Collins, and maybe test him like that. But sure, I suppose it's one thing about Collins, as we mentioned already. He can hurl you anyway. If it comes in low, he can get on top there, or it's high. Like, so I suppose if you had someone who could maybe put a stop to him coming out with the ball, because he's fierce influential, and his distribution from deep is absolutely top notch. Like, he can pick it out there 40-yard pass into the hand, or and next thing it ends up at Harn or Conor Elwood or Jack Ford, and it's over the bar there. So for me anyway, I nailed my colours to the mast. I think it's going to be a Mellows win. So I'll hold out now for your prediction there.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you. Just purely based on, I think if Gort were coming in off the back of having played like teams of the quality of Craughwell every day, I'd say they're a good shout. They'll have taken a lot of confidence from the Ballinderry game the last, even though they didn't quite get the result they fully wanted. But it was, in any case, like going into the way the fixtures fell and how they weren't overly impressive against Kinvara in the second round. Like, Craughwell were firm favourites always to top that group, and it would have been a surprise, I think, going into last weekend had Gort actually topped it. So to come as close as they did, and to put so much pressure on Craughwell, I thought it was savagely impressive. But saying that, like, compare that with what Mellows are after beating in the last couple of rounds and what they played in the first round against Thurlock, and I think it's just too big a step up, all in the one go. So yeah, I think Mellows win it by a couple of points.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so then final game of the weekend, wrapping it up on Sunday, 6 o'clock in Athenry again. We've Craughwell against Ahascragh-Fohenagh. 2 Senior B teams that are on their way up to Senior A. But you kind of, they're like for like in that regard. But when you look at it, Craughwell are hot favourites going into this again.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this could be an absolute score fest. I think it's going to be an absolute shootout because Ahascragh this year, there seems to be their mentality. For years it would have been Pádraig back sweeping and they would have played 5 attackers, but this year they're manning up and they're basically going 15 on 15, which will mean it'll be a great game for the neutral maybe, but I think this one could be just a step too far for Craughwell, unfortunately. I think the Ahascragh, it'll be a step too far for Ahascragh. Sorry, Jesus.
Cheers, Ahascragh. I love that for a second.
Sorry, Jesus, no, it's late. It's been a long week. Sorry, excuse me. I think this one could be a step too far for Ahascragh. Now, in saying that, I think, Jesus, Cathal Mannion now, he's had a couple of decent games for Ahascragh so far, but he hasn't cut loose this year. And I suppose if you were looking at it on the top 2 players on the field, they'd be the 2 Mannions. You know what I mean? Ahascragh probably possess the 2 best players on the field in one sense. And you see even with Oran Moore-Murray, when you have 2 players of that quality in your ranks, you can, and Niall Burke and Gareth McInerney kind of similar vein. They're operating in either half. Really, you can go a long way. That's no disrespect to the rest of the Oran Moore-Murray team because they're excellent as well. But I think Ahascragh probably feel they're in bonus territory now. I think they'll give it a rattle, but I think as we've listed here in the notes, I think the problems Craughwell offer are just so many in their attacking unit. Jesus Christ Almighty! Like it's just, you have like Patrick Monaghan the last day, he scored 2-2. Adrian Prendergast wasn't playing. Niall Healy, Thomas Monaghan, Shane Dolan. Oh, like what an attack! Jamie Ryan, like where do you start there if you're Kevin Ward? Where do you say, Jesus, who do I put here? Like, or who do I kind of shackle here? Like, who is the biggest threat there really? Because on their day, any one of them is a match winner. Yeah,
well, the thing is, at least he'll have a fair idea where they're going to line out and how they're going to line out. It'll probably be Prendergast probably 10, Jamie Ryan 11, Pat Monaghan 12, and then inside you're probably looking at Dolan, Niall Healy, Tom Monaghan, or the 2 corners might switch with each other, the 2 wings might switch with each other, but that's probably what you'd be expecting to get, So that's kind of one, like, he kind of knows what he's dealing with in that regard, so he can kind of have matchups decided in his head and give lads a fair idea of where he thinks they'll be playing. Like, but like you compare it to Mullagh last week where they had going into the game, they know Davy Glenn an issue here, and they couldn't handle him for the first half. He went to town, and then Stephen Kelly went out and did a fine job. Like, but there's 5 more Davy Glennons to mark this weekend. Like, so that kind of leaves you with no choice but to kind of, in many respects, maybe go man on man and see how you get on for the first while. Like, looking at that, you'd see Bleheen matching up on Jamie Ryan. That's a battle. You say, look at Sean Bleheen, can you come out on top in that duel, and there's no reason why Bleheen shouldn't have it in his head that I am going to come out on top in that duel, nothing to fear. Like, Jamie Ryan's a top class forward, but when you're like these Ahascragh fellas are going into the game ultra confident, more confident than they've ever been in their hurling careers, so there will be that kind of confidence about them, and kind of element of having no fear really, because as we alluded to, it's bonus territory for them totally. They can now go out and have a go, like Sean Bleheen, Jamie Ryan, Adrian Prendergast. You're probably looking at Owen Delaney he'll probably be that wing, Stephen Kelly in on Niall Healy, one lad, I wonder, I kind of put this to you, Luke Cosgrove, could you see him in from the start, do you reckon, the next day?
I reckon so, and I'd say just how much Owen Nocton seemed to offer them in midfield, I could imagine he'd probably start there maybe alongside Cahill, and that would, You know, you could see Jared Glynn maybe and Ronan Kelly then just kind of pushing up and advancing into the attack, which would offer them something there and would cause, like, I suppose one thing, Craughwell have been a small bit porous in defence so far, like, so that, like, Ahascragh will get chances. You know, it's just a matter of whether they have the capability to take them, because on the 17 wides, I can tell you for sure that definitely won't crush it against Craughwell. They'll have the game done adjusted at half time if you're not going to be as prolific, if you're not going to be more prolific than that, we'll say. But yeah, Luke Cosgrove was mightily impressive when he came on. He didn't look out of place there at all at full back. So maybe he would start there, maybe. And one person we haven't even touched on, he's a fine man marker as well, is someone like Lawrence Tully. Like he would back corner back. Yeah. He filled in for Owen Delaney when he went back there. And they had Mullagh had, his name escapes me, Ronan Mitchell, who's kind of a younger fella. He's small in stature, like, but he was really lively in the first half, and kind of Tully he'd have a bit of experience there, and he would have no shortage of space, but I'd imagine he'll probably start in that line. But as you mentioned already, you touched on Sean Blaheen there. He'll have no fear of Jamie Ryan, like you'd imagine. Like Ryan is kind of suited to him in a sense, like he's going to be, you know, pace and or like it won't be a battle of pace. We'll say it'll be more of a bruising contest between those two more than anything else. And like they have good defenders all the same, like between Tully, Delaney, Kelly, Cosgrove. You know, there's no shortage there. There's no shortage of quality there. And then, like, if the two Manions can, you know, cut loose, like if Cahill can just, you know, turn it on, like, and bring it to a level that he had shown sometimes for Galway, like say Cahill Manion that was below in Kilkenny there, you know, in Nolan Park maybe last year. Last year, wasn't it? Was it last year?
Yeah.
I'm trying to, sorry, this COVID is me completely.
Last year,
yeah. Like if you had a Cahill Manion like that and a Porrick, you know, Porrick will probably, you know, he'll chip in with his 1-2 from centre forward, and he'll kind of, you know, it'll probably be Mark Horan that'll probably tag him, and Gerard O'Halloran, and have his hands full with Cahill, like, you know, no more than himself, you know. But I suppose Cahill won't have an easy task on that either. It won't be an easy task trying to get away from Gerard O'Halloran either. But
that's a fact.
Yeah, but as you kind of said, I suppose if Craughwell have ambitions of going a bit further, they probably should be winning this game. Not probably, they should be winning this game.
Yeah, like the thing is, like you mentioned the 17 wides Ahascragh-Fohenagh hit the last day, but with that they hit 315. Like that's 35 scoring chances in itself, and there could be a few more there that maybe drop short or whatnot. But that's at least 35 scoring chances created. So like if Craughwell are still that bit porous and they're conceding those sort of chances, there's no way Ahascragh-Fohenagh can't be in the game if their conversion rate is gone up to around the 75% mark, which is kind of what teams, to win this game, they need to be looking at that at least, like, you know, in reality, because Craughwell are going to create the 35 chances at the other end, no matter what you do, because they just are, like, you know. So, like, in fairness, Ahascragh-Fohenagh have been putting up big scores, like, you know, 220 against Killimordaly was a 119 Pierce's, 315 Mullagh. That's serious scoring.
Savage.
The only problem is you're coming up against a team that have scored 522 and 424 in their two previous games. But so, you know, that being said, so looking at it that way, you say there's no way this can't be a shootout. But how often have we said that, or anyone ever said that about two teams, and it turns out to be the most dour, boring sort of a game ever known to man? But I don't see it that way. I think in Kenny Park too, it just lends itself to good hurling, like, you know, and provided the weather does play ball this weekend, we've a good weekend. I can't see how this isn't an entertaining game to watch.
From a management point of view, why would you change something that's working either? You know, like both of them should be, as you mentioned the other day, they both should be ultra confident coming in. Like it should be, as you said, Ahascragh will never be more confident. Craughwell are back with the big boys, and they've shown they're more than good enough to, you know, to play at that level. So why do anything different? And just, I implore both teams to give us a shootout at the weekend. Give the fans what they want, as they say.
That's for sure. And with all that being said, I think we're probably both in agreement that we do expect Craughwell to come through at the end of it all. But you know, it's a trial run for Ahascragh-Fohenagh and Senior A. This is what they're going to face every day next year. So, as we mentioned, go out and have a go at it, boys, and, you know, see how you get on. And whatever happens, they'll learn an awful lot from it. That'll help them out next year, you know. So final game we're touched on. We won't spend a whole pile of time on it. Ourselves and Kilnadeema-Leitrim Saturday evening in Ballinasloe on the first round of the relegation. We'll let you take the lead, David. Geez, we haven't seen Duggan Park for a couple of years anyhow, you know.
Yeah. Just one thing from a player's point of view, from yourself, like, what are you happy that you're going straight into a game this week, or would you prefer to be in Kinvara's position, kind of watching on from the outside and maybe, you know, wait to see how that plays out and knowing exactly what you have to do second time out then, or, you know, how does it feel from a player's point of view?
No, I think we're all happy to be getting straight back out at it anyhow, because it's the quickest way to forget about Ardrahan, because, you know, it's simply you can't look back at Ardrahan now. You're looking forward to a new championship essentially in many ways. You know, it's a group of 3 and we have to stop the group, and so do Killimordaly and so do Kinvara. That's kind of how you have to look at it. Everything that's gone on before has to be parked. You know, we're all coming in off the back of, you know, no victories, so there's no fear factor from any team towards the other, and there's not a lot of knowledge shared between us, because we played Kilnadeema-Leitrim in a league match. Was it last year or the year before? We haven't played Kinvara in 3 or 4 years, I'd say. I can't imagine Kilnadeema-Leitrim and Kinvara play each other too often either. Like, you know, so there's we don't know an awful lot about each other other than what we'd see reading match reports and see in the odd championship game we might have watched each other playing, and, like, you know, but as regards actually taking on each other, we don't know an awful lot about each other, so it lends itself.
Yeah, sorry, there's another kind of interesting dynamic to that this year now as well, because in other years you'd have been able to go and Kinvara would have been able to go and have a look at you this year. You know, like, whereas now they're going to be relying on kind of second-hand information and reports, and, you know, they'll be relying on, you know, what's said in the papers maybe, and across they might get a small bit of feedback from somewhere, you know. Managers and players can always kind of dig it out of somewhere, but it's just a real interesting kind of dynamic this year that you don't really know, you know, you can't tell, because it's not a streamed game either, which makes it it makes it even worse. So I don't know, it's probably a case of, you know, Kilnadeema-Leitrim need to improve defensively and you need to improve your attack. So, you know, that could be the sector. Whoever gets on top there will need to, you know, whoever gets on top of that kind of jewel, or, you know, that 6 or 8 or whatever there, could end up winning it. There's probably a few interesting tussles around the field. It'll be interesting to see. You won't give it away now, but who will be tagging Brian Mullagh, will say, like, from your perspective, you know, if you can kind of shut him down, you have a good chunk of the battle fought already there.
We thought that against Ardrahan too, though.
Well, that's true. Yeah. But see, this is it. Like, but it'll probably be, at least, you know, at least it's not Pierce Stadium in a sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no disaster of a win there from your perspective, like, that you have to contend with. Like, it'll be Duggan Park. You both know what to expect. It's a tight kind of venue. Like, it's something I would say would probably favour you, without trying to give you any disrespect. You kind of, you know, I mean, you show what you were capable of in Lochrain. It's kind of a similar kind of pitch to that. And but new championship, as we have it marked down the notes. It's a new championship. It's, you know what you have to do. You have to, you know, probably win your 2 games really, just to kind of be sure and kind of take it from there. But, I'll give you a tentative nod.
Christ.
Are things that bad? Sorry. Kilnadeema-Leitrim it is then. So I get your money on here. You heard it here first.
Not too often bad I get the nod these days. So thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to give. I think you've kind of shown a small bit more inconsistency over a 60-minute period. The Kilnadeema-Leitrim have. They've shown well for 20 minutes of that, but they've kind of dropped off, and, you know, they're disappointing really. Like, it just seems to be the confidence must be at an all-time low, and, you know, in the club at the moment. Jesus, if you haven't picked up a win for this long now, you're like, where in the name of God is it ever going to come from? And in fairness, you've got a win since, you know, you've got a couple of wins since they've experienced their last one, you know. So with their last championship win, we'll say, you know, but. It's an interesting game. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a game you wouldn't mind actually being on the stream, but I suppose from your point of view, you're not too disappointed with that either, because it'll leave Kinvara with, you know, scratching their head as to what to expect, because they actually don't know what's coming down the line until you know, until the result is over, which adds another kind of dynamic to it in itself.
It is strange, and because in many ways, other years Kinvara are at an advantage in that they would have had a chance to have a look at both teams, I'd say, but they won't have that opportunity this year. So it is. I think we'll both teams be looking to get out and obviously get a win this weekend, and then you'll be out the week after again against Kinvara. And if you win that, 2 weeks your job is done, and you can just forget about it for another year and let the other two teams kind of battle it out the week after to sort it out between themselves. That's the dream scenario for ourselves in Kilnadeema-Leitrim anyhow. But we'll see how Saturday goes first. So with that, David, we'll wrap up. Kind of plenty of information from us for 1 week, I think. And now the viewers, they don't have to look at you for another couple of weeks. Now you're heading away on a bit of a staycation for yourself.
I am indeed, yeah. So best of luck. I'm sure you'll keep them well updated in my absence, and I'm sure you'll find someone else to join you from somewhere.
Yeah, well, we were meant to have Chunky with us tonight, but daily duty kind of got in the way. I don't know how he chose that over us. I don't know, but look at it. That's not for us to decide. So we'll hopefully have Chunky with me in the chair next week to kind of go back over the weekend's action and look ahead to next week's quarterfinals. So hope to chat to you then. All the best, and any feedback, please feel free to let us know, because we're still kind of getting used to all this. So any feedback and any improvements you think we can make, we'd fully appreciate it. So chat to you next week.
Good luck.